She was tied to a post right at the front desk and seen as a disgrace to the family, but a minute later, her husband showed up and everyone went pale. Don't forget to subscribe and leave your thoughts in the comments. From the outside, the Whitmore estate looked like a portrait of American aristocracy. 3 acres of sculpted fences, a circular driveway lined with imported Italian stone, and a towering house with pure white symmetry, like a courthouse covered in pearls. Passersby would slow down just to get a better look at the place. It appeared in charity flyers and local magazines, always with phrases like pillar of the community or beacon of grace. But for Mia Tran, the girl they raised behind those pillars, it was nothing more than a gilded cage. She had lived there since she was 5 years old. Her first memory of the house wasn't the marble foyer or the tall French doors, but the silence. Not a warm or safe silence, but one that wrapped around her like a sentence, wordless but heavy, telling her she didn't belong there. The Whitmore family didn't beat her. They didn't yell or lock her up. Instead, they suffocated her with cold expectations and polite cruelty in the quiet horror of polite exclusion. She was adopted out of charity after a car accident took her birth mother, a talented pianist and senior student who had been raising Mia Tran alone. Her father was listed as unknown on all documents, and the adoption was arranged through a local church outreach program for at-risk children. The Whitmore family, already under scrutiny after Judge Whitmore made racist remarks, found a way to soften their public image with a very specific act of redemption. Adopting a disadvantaged black girl became their ticket to redemption. They named her Mia Tran Whitmore, let her live in their house, gave her a white canopied bed and a closet full of pre-approved dresses, but they never gave her a seat at the dinner table. Not exactly. She was spoken of with proud tolerance. Our foster daughter, they'd say, as if her presence was a trophy, a symbol of moral uplift. Not once were they ever willing to let her call them mom or dad. When she tried, they gently corrected her over and over until she learned to keep her tongue quiet. Her childhood was full of contradictions. She attended the best schools, but was banned from the debate team because her voice didn't carry enough authority. She was praised for good grades in private, but never acknowledged publicly. At family ceremonies, she had to stand 2 steps behind her siblings. On holiday greeting cards, she's either shown with short hair or wearing colors that help her blend in more. Her hair is chemically straightened every month. Her skin is like brown coffee, and her jokes never get a laugh. By the time she was 16, she stopped asking why. The Whitmore siblings, Andrew and Chloe, grew up to be perfect versions of their parents. Andrew is a rising lawyer, cold and mechanical, always dressed in blues and grays like colors mean nothing to him. Chloe, 2 years younger than Mia Tran, is a popular magazine columnist and social media darling. She wears pastel dresses and has learned to tilt her head just right for photos. She calls Mia Tran the family's social experiment and whispers conversations far less gentle than she lets on. They all share the same belief. Mia Tran should be grateful for the roof, the clothes, the education, and the family name. Grateful enough to stay silent, obedient, and invisible. Mia Tran's coming of age was a quiet rebellion. She didn't shout or run away. Instead, she worked. She completed college through scholarships and work-study programs while managing the Whitmore family's neglected accounting books. When the nonprofit sector called, she answered. She built a database platform to distribute small donations to disadvantaged entrepreneurs. It succeeded quietly, like everything else she did. That's when she met Daniel Hart. It all began at a tech conference in Washington, D.C. 2 lonely people at the coffee stand, both tired of making small talk and forced smiles. He spoke softly and thoughtfully, a visionary programmer no investor believed in. She saw in him something that mirrored herself, overlooked, underestimated, but quietly burning with the desire to build something real. That night they talked, then emailed, visited each other on weekends, and eventually fell in love. By the time Daniel's startup exploded, drawing national media attention and a billion-dollar valuation, they were bound by something deeper than contracts or capital, but kept it secret. Mia Tran knew her family would never accept him, not because he was wealthy, but because he was a successful black man completely outside their control. They married quietly in Seattle, witnessed only by close friends, with no family present. She wore a simple dress. He wore the watch he always wore, and their vows were brief but sincere. In the months that followed, Mia Tran's relationship with the Whitmore family grew increasingly distant. Her financial support became essential. Judge Whitmore admitted to serious debts, and Chloe's media company was losing money. Without revealing her identity, Mia Tran quietly used her nonprofit accounts to pay the overdue taxes on the Whitmore estate. She paid off the second mortgage. She bailed out Andrew's law firm through donations to a legal organization he didn't know she funded. She did it not out of love, but to close the chapter. Maybe deep down, she hoped that if she could keep this place standing, those inside might eventually become better people. Maybe she could prove her worth. Maybe finally they'd see her. But the house never changed. The walls still echoed with whispered insults and rehearsed politeness. They still forgot her birthday. They still corrected her tone, posture, and ambitions. She was still too much and never enough. The breaking point came on a hot July morning. She'd just returned from visiting a shelter renovation project and found an envelope on her bed. It was an invitation to the Whitmore Foundation garden party, honoring a legacy of giving. Her name wasn't on the event documents, but she'd organized every logistical detail. She mentioned it at dinner. Judge Whitmore glanced at his wineglass. "Why is your name there? You're not a trustee." "But I'm the one who made the partnership happen. The foundation exists because we let you operate under our name," Chloe said sweetly while carving the chicken. "That's a privilege, not a right." Mia Tran didn't reply. She stood up, excused herself, and went back to her room. That night she lay awake for hours. Daniel texted her, "You still want to do this, right?" She stared at the screen for a long time, then replied, "Okay, let's expose who they really are." The gala was scheduled for the following weekend, an exclusive event with catered food. A string quartet played, and the guest list came from the governor's contacts. Whitmore rehearsed his speech. Chloe coordinated the photographers. Andrew reviewed liability disclaimers to make sure no unwanted stories slipped out. Leah was given a beige server's uniform. Not a dress, no name tag, just an outfit designed to blend in with the tablecloths. She slipped it on quietly. Daniel had booked her a plane ticket. She waited, and the house, clueless about the coming storm, still gleamed on the surface. Marble, music, champagne, and all the trappings. But underneath, something old was cracking. Something patient, something deep, and once it exploded, it would change everything. That night, Mia Tran couldn't sleep either. But this time, she didn't feel tired. She was ready. The morning of the party started with the stifling heat pressing against the window. Thick and suffocating like a warning. Mia Tran got up early. Not because she had something to do, though she usually did, but because she simply couldn't sleep. She watched the sky shift from indigo to pale yellow through the blinds, then sat silently on the edge of the bed, still wearing the server's uniform given to her the day before. It lay on her lap like a costume in a play she no longer wanted to be part of. Downstairs, the estate was coming alive with hurried footsteps and the soft clatter of hired staff setting up tables and decorating centerpieces. White tents were pitched along the edge of the lawn, their corners fluttering gently in the breeze. Crystal glasses sparkled in the sunlight. Rows of custom chairs circled a round platform built beside the garden fountain. There, the guests would raise their glasses to toast a legacy they had inherited, unaware that the only reason this estate still stood was the quiet intervention of the woman now expected to stay hidden. Mia Tran passed through the kitchen. Everyone ignored her except the pastry chef, who gave her a brief nod before returning to arranging macarons. She found her assigned spot on the chart pinned to the fridge. Station 4, wine service, backyard. The chart didn't list names, only roles, just how the Whitmore family liked it. They never wanted their help to draw too much attention. By early afternoon, the first guests started arriving. Luxury cars pulled up one after another. Women in pastel dresses and men in summer suits walked through the gates. They blew kisses in the air, adjusted their jewelry, and smiled with the low-toned confidence of those accustomed to power. Mia Tran sat near the edge of the porch, hands neatly folded, waiting for her cue. She saw Andrew first, sitting near the entrance with 2 city council members. He signaled with the ease of a man who grew up knowing the whole world would be listening. Chloe followed, wearing a long ivory dress embroidered with flowers and a delicate pearl headband, looking like a bridal magazine cover. She held a glass of champagne and smiled brightly as if she had been sculpted that way. Their parents stood on either side. The judge wore a pale linen suit, his wife, a form-fitting light blue dress, diamonds sparkling at her neck. There were speeches, congratulations, and photographers. Every word spoken on that stage was a carefully staged performance. How the Whitmore family had served the community for generations. How they had opened their hearts and homes to those in need. Their legacy was built on empathy and leadership. The audience clapped, sipped their drinks, and didn't once look in Mia Tran's direction. She quietly moved between the tables, filling glasses, avoiding eye contact. A guest mistook her for a server and mumbled his order without bothering to look back. A man smiled at her and said, "Didn't expect the waitstaff to look this stunning tonight." She didn't respond. It had taken her years to understand that her silence was their comfort. The sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the grounds, softening the sharp edges. Just then, as Mia reached for a hollow flute, she heard the unmistakable sound of breaking glass. A wine glass slipped from a guest's hand and shattered on the stone floor. Instinctively, Mia knelt down to pick up the shards. A woman waved her off, embarrassed. "Don't worry, she's used to cleaning up after everyone else," Chloe called from behind her, her voice bright but fake, sisterly. The laughter that followed was quiet, hoarse, and clearly cruel. Mia slowly stood up, glass shards in her hand, blood beginning to pool at the edge of her palm. Her face remained expressionless. She turned and walked toward the catering tent, ignoring the stares. Inside, she washed her hands under cold water and wrapped them with paper towels. Moments later, the real spark ignited. Outside, the judge, perhaps encouraged by drinks or the crowd's laughter, raised his hand to get everyone's attention. He signaled for Mia to step forward. "We want to do something symbolic," he announced with a smirk. "A gesture reflecting our shared history, the burden others have carried on our behalf." There was a pause, just long enough for the offer to sink in. "What do you say, Mia? Ready to perform a little?" Before she could answer, two young, clueless, obedient event assistants gently grabbed her arms. "We'll be quick," one of them said. As if it mattered a great deal, they led her to the fountain, where a wooden post stood a part of the decoration mimicking historic architecture. Mia knew it served no purpose other than decoration, but now it was being used as a stage for humiliation. She didn't resist. She didn't scream. They turned her toward the crowd, faced her back to the post, and tied a silk ribbon around her wrists. Her bare hands shimmered in the fading light. Her dress, the beige server uniform, was rumpled and unflattering. She stood there, straight-backed and silent, as delighted whispers spread through the room. Laughter broke out again. A few phone cameras went up not for the cruelty they'd later claim. But just in that moment, Chloe giggled, taking a sip of her drink. Andrew rolled his eyes and muttered something to the man beside him about always needing the last word. The judge raised his glass. He said it was a reminder of the road we've traveled. Laugh more. But Mia Tran didn't flinch. She kept her eyes on the horizon. She felt the ribbon against her skin, smelled the sweat rising from her collarbone, tasted the metallic tang at the back of her tongue. Every part of her body trembled with shame, but she didn't let them see it. She had given them years. She'd paid their bills, saved their legacy, and hidden her pain behind a perfect posture and a careful smile. And in return, they gave her this: a display, an object, a lesson to present to those in power. She waited. She wasn't sure exactly when Daniel arrived, but she heard the engine. Smooth, low, clear. The guests turned around. The laughter froze, then stopped completely. Forks hung suspended in midair. Glasses trembled. A black Rolls-Royce glided gently down the road and slowed carefully near the garden's edge. Its mere presence silenced the space. The driver stepped out and opened the back door. Daniel Harlan Hart appeared like a storm in human form, tall, composed, wearing a navy suit that looked tailor-made to the rhythm of his heartbeat. His face was unreadable. His movements were slow and precise. His gaze swept over the crowd as if they were irrelevant details. And then they found her. Mia Tran, still tied, still barefoot, still silent. He walked without a word, through stunned witnesses, through whispers, through the quiet chaos, as people realized they were facing someone far greater than they ever imagined. He reached the fountain. She didn't move. He knelt, pulled a thin blade from inside his jacket, and cut through the silk. Her wrists were freed. He gently took her hand, checked the rough skin, then lifted it to his lips and kissed the wound. Only then did everyone truly begin to understand. The judge stepped forward, lips parted. "Who?" Daniel's voice echoed through the crowd. "This woman is my wife." A collective, genuine gasp spread through the air, like fire over dry leaves. "I want to know who thought it was okay to tie her to a post like an animal." No one answered. Even Chloe's wine glass trembled in her hand. Even Andrew couldn't respond. He instinctively stepped back half a pace. Mia Tran said nothing. Daniel stood tall beside her. "This ends right here," he said. "You have 15 minutes to pack up and leave." The judge blinked. "Leave?" Daniel turned back slightly. "You don't own it anymore?" "Not at all." He reached into his breast pocket and pulled out a document. 3 months ago, this house went into foreclosure, unpaid taxes, missed mortgage payments, desperate calls to creditors. She answered every single one. He held up the paper. She'd paid for this house with her college savings and emergency fund. She sold her car. She gave up her future trying to save your past. And when the bank finally sent the notice, she called me right away. She didn't ask for help. She asked if I could buy it anonymously so she wouldn't lose face. He handed the paper to the judge, whose hands trembled as he unfolded it. "Take a look, you already signed." Silence, heavy and stretched out. The crowd began to shift uneasily. Daniel turned back to them. "You don't raise a failure," he said. "You raised a woman. A woman who kept your light burning, who held this house together while you mocked her. And today, on the very ground she saved, you humiliated her." He didn't shout. He didn't curse. He just spoke the truth, and it landed heavier than any yell. And no one, absolutely no one, had the courage to argue back. Mia Tran stood there, unbound but stronger than ever, and those who thought they'd broken her began to scatter. There was a strange stillness in the air, the kind of silence that follows sudden quiet after too much noise. For a few seconds, the party seemed to freeze in place. Guests were turning back, forks halfway to their mouths, wine glasses dangling uncertainly from fingers. The sun was setting slowly, casting long shadows on the neatly trimmed lawn, as if time itself paused to witness what would happen next. Daniel stood beside Mia Tran, with the calm presence of a man who didn't need to raise his voice to command attention. His presence was like gravity, undeniable and quietly powerful. The navy blue suit he wore fit his frame like a second skin, his hands steady as he handed the papers to the man who'd claimed to be Mia Tran's father for over 2 decades. Judge Whitmore, once so imposing in the courtroom and campaign photos, now looked like a man collapsing under the weight of something he couldn't deny or reject. He slowly unfolded the paper, as if hoping it would say something different each time he blinked. But there it was, his signature, his address, the official sales stamp, all transferred to a corporation he believed was an anonymous investor, a lifeline when his assets were being seized, a favor, a miracle, a trap. His lips parted but no sound came out. Beside him, his wife reached for the newspaper, scanning the contents with growing worry. Her mouth twitched in disbelief. Then she looked up, eyes wide, searching for something to hold on to. "You lied to us," she said, her voice barely more than a whisper. "You lied to us." Mia Tran's voice finally broke the heavy silence, deep and steady, her throat hoarse but firm. "No, I saved you." She looked straight at her mother, the woman who taught her how to sit up straight but never how to stand tall. "And he taught me how to walk tall." That one line was enough to make the whole room hold its breath. No one dared speak. Even the guests who had been giggling just minutes before now stood frozen, their faces twisted in discomfort, as if they'd realized too late that the performance they'd mocked was actually someone else's final nail in the coffin. Daniel stepped forward, not toward the judge or his wife, but toward the remaining crowd. His gaze moved calmly and carefully from one face to another. "Let me make one thing clear," he said, his voice cold and soft but echoing like thunder on a still night. "This woman gave up everything to protect people who never protected her. She poured all her savings, her strength, and her future into saving this house. Not for recognition, not for thanks, but because she believed that maybe, just maybe, family meant something. He let the words settle before continuing. When she got the foreclosure notice, she didn't come to me desperate. She came with a plan. She asked me to buy the house, but not in my name. It wasn't the cold, performative silence of anger or politeness. It was something warmer, fuller something that let breath flow freely through the lungs without fear of consequence. Mia Tran stood on the back porch threshold, her hand gently intertwined with Daniel's the remnants of the evening, folding chairs, half-empty glasses, forgotten shawls, scattered like discarded old props from a play no one wanted to perform again. The fountain, once the heart of the family's cherished garden, still trickled softly, water shimmering under the fading twilight. The wooden post she'd been tied to leaned crookedly, the silk rope loosely coiled at its base looking strangely normal, without the scene it once held. Daniel walked over without a word. He bent down, picked up the rope, studied it for a moment, then carried it to the trash bin near the gate and dropped it in. No ceremony, no anger in his action, just a quiet ending. Mia Tran looked at him, arms gently crossed over her chestnut defensively, but thoughtfully. She had imagined this moment once before, but never like this. She thought freedom would roar with victory, that vindication would come with applause or cleansing shouts, but instead, she felt silence. Not the silence of being ignored or pushed aside, but the silence that follows a long, fierce storm, a pause to breathe, a moment just to be. Daniel came back beside her and gently placed his hand on the small of her back. "You can sell this place," he said after a pause. "We can go anywhere, Paris, Seattle, buy land in Vermont, and build something from scratch." She gave a faint smile, the corner of her mouth lifting with a hint of genuine pleasure. "You know I hate the snow, though." He chuckled softly, leaning on her shoulder. Then forget Vermont. They sat together on the stone bench beneath the porch trellis, bathed in the last golden light of sunset. Mia Tran tilted her head toward the sky. The warmth on her skin now felt different, not something to endure, but something to enjoy. For the first time in years, she wasn't bracing for an insult. She wasn't calculating what to say, where to sit, or what tone would earn respect. She was simply here and she was allowed to be. "Do you remember when we first met?" she asked suddenly, her voice soft and thoughtful. Daniel nodded, a fond smile spreading across his face. Of course he was working 2 jobs, finishing night school, still managing taxes for his dad, and making sure his mom took her medicine. "And you lived above a bookstore," she said, now grinning widely, trying to build a startup no one believed in. He was the only one who believed. She looked at him closely again. She said when she met him, she didn't see a billionaire at all. She saw someone who listened, someone who looked her in the eye and felt no obligation. She saw someone who never asked her to be small. He took her hand again, gently holding it between both of his. No words were spoken after that. The silence between them now was nothing like the silence she'd known in that house for decades. This silence didn't demand apologies or restraint. It didn't wrap around her like a gagged cloth. The room was soft and spacious. She could stretch out freely without any hidden walls. Finally, she rested her head on his shoulder. "I want to start over," she whispered, almost like a breath. "I want a life that's truly mine." Daniel nodded, running his thumb gently over the back of her hand. "Let's talk, and we'll build it from scratch. No more chains. No need to prove anything to anyone anymore." They sat there until the sky turned indigo and cicadas began singing in the trees. When they finally stood up, it wasn't because they were rushed or exhausted, but because they had a purpose. They moved around the house like explorers discovering new land. The rooms looked the same. The chandelier still hung in the foyer. The marble table was still there. The long dining table remained, but the energy had changed. It was no longer their stage. Now, it belonged to her. In the living room, she paused to look over wine glasses still scattered on the table. Crumpled napkins lay near the fireplace, and dessert plates balanced on the edge of furniture like relics from a family that never truly existed. She stepped forward and picked up one of the framed photos from the fireplace mantel. It was an old family photo, her siblings dressed in tailored clothes, her mother in pale pastel attire. The judge stood commanding, and Mia Tran, stiff and a bit off-center, smiled too brightly in a dress someone else had picked out for her. "Hold on to it," Daniel said from behind her. She looked at the photo a little longer, then flipped it face down and set it on the table. "No, I'm not that person anymore." The next morning, Mia Tran woke up with the window open and the fresh scent of wet grass drifting in. She lay in bed for a moment, listening to birds singing, her hand resting on her chest, surprised at how the tension had lifted. She no longer woke up waiting for the next order, the next cold stare, or the unspoken insults. In the kitchen, Daniel had finished making coffee. He handed her a cup without saying a word, as if they had always lived like this. She leaned against the kitchen counter and watched him hum a meaningless tune while beating eggs. They didn't say anything. They didn't need to. The silence between them was complete. That week, they started cleaning the house. She didn't cry once. There was no more sadness, just clarity. They packed up her parents' things, the antique crystal, old legal journals, Chloe's trophy sand, put them in storage, not out of sentiment, but because the past no longer had the power to hurt her. In the attic, they found her old, dusty notebooks hidden behind holiday decorations. She opened one page and saw a list titled, "Things I'll Do When I Have Free Time." The letter was written in green ink, the handwriting a bit shaky. Daniel leaned over her shoulder and read quietly. "Learn how to paint sunsets," he read aloud, a smile spreading across his face. "I'm not saying these are big dreams," she laughed, "just my kind of dreams." "Well then, let's go buy some paint," he said. They turned the old study into an art room. Daniel built the shelves, and she filled them with paintbrushes, canvas, and jars of paint she hadn't allowed herself to touch for years. The first painting she made wasn't a sunset scene. It was the view from the backyard after the pillar was gone, the peaceful garden, the open sky. They started having dinner at the long oak table, where cold stares and harsh remarks used to take place. Now, the table held candles, bread, soft music, and conversations that never turned cruel. They laughed, not because everything was perfect, but because finally, it was real. One night, Daniel came home and handed her a small key. "I bought a cabin," he said, "like view, no neighbors, just trees, stars, and us, for when this place feels too heavy." She stared at the key for a long moment. "You're not planning to run away from this, are you?" "No," he said gently. "I just want you to know you have a choice now, not chains." That night, she stood on the back porch and stared out at the yard. It no longer looked like a crime scene. It looked like land, and for the first time, she saw it not as a place she survived, but as a place she could start. A few months later, a letter arrived, an invitation to Chloe's engagement party. Her name was misspelled. The envelope was addressed to Miss Whitemore. Daniel opened it, raised an eyebrow, then handed it to her without a word. She smiled. "I'm not going." He tilted his head. "So what?" She walked to the desk, pulled out a photo of her and Daniel at the Global Innovation Conference, arms around each other, both grinning wide as he accepted an award. She signed the back with a silver pen. "From the useless girl you raised, thank you for setting me free." She slipped it in the envelope, sealed it, and sent it without hesitation. Now, when she wakes up in the morning, she waters the plants, paints in the sunlight, walks barefoot on the cool kitchen tiles while Daniel sings off-key in the next room. She makes coffee without rushing, breathes without waiting for the air to turn harsh. Her life isn't noisy, it doesn't have to be, because the girl who was once tied to a prayer post to disappear no longer lives in that house. Instead, there's a woman with paint-covered hands, a chest full of breath, and a future that finally belongs to her. And if Mia Tran could whisper one thing to the girl in the garden, to the trembling heart, tied wrists, and shattered pride, it would be this: hold on, you're not finished yet. Your best chapter hasn't even begun. If this story touched you, don't forget to subscribe for more. Check out our other videos for more powerful stories like this, and share this video with anyone who needs to see it.